Good evening, Thunder Wizards. So, yesterday I promised you that I was going to talk about the difference between psychic energy that comes through somebody just using, quote, psychic energy, and the difference between that and the energy that comes through with the runes. And a slightly different tack, some differences between tarot and runes. People use tarot and runes sometimes for the same purpose, to do divination. But I want to talk to you about the difference between the divination that comes through using things like runes and other methods. The difference between using things like tarot, which is designed, as I understand it, I'm not a tarot expert, but as I understand it, its main function is divination. And how using runes for divination is slightly different. So while we're on the subject, let me get up my information here. I don't know if you can read that. I hope you can. But it has some of the websites, and you've got here towards, at the top, you have runecertification.thunderwizard.com. So if you're interested in knowing how to get certified into doing 9 world rune readings, which I do, and to work through my website to make a living, you can go to runecertification.thunderwizard.com. It's also a centrally located place where you can see all of my videos, both public and private DVDs and such, in one spot. There's tons of video information there. And then you've got runereadings.thunderwizard.com, which if you want a rune reading from me. And then you've got transformation.thunderwizard.com, which is where you can get a 9 world rune reading, a Vedic astrological reading, and a North Star shamanic reading. Very powerful stuff in one concentrated chunk. So we're going to be talking about runes today. So I was talking yesterday. Let me give you a little bit of, get us up to speed here. One of the things that was most important about what we were talking about yesterday is that, based on my experience and based on my study, psychic information, where you receive information from some supernatural source outside of your conscious physical intellect, that in order for that to work, the 3 selves, we're not made up of one self, we're made up of 3 selves. We have a higher self, which our ancestors called Woden. We have a middle self, which our ancestors called Ve, or sacred space. And we have a lower self, which has the subconscious and the unconscious mind, and that is called Will. Odin, Vili, and Ve is how my ancestors, my pre-Christian ancestors, talked about these 3 centers. Chinese have another word for it. They call it heaven, earth, and man. This trinity can be found in many shamanic cultures. By the way, the trinity does not exist in the Bible. So one of the fundamental core teachings of Christianity is not a biblical teaching. There's nothing in the Bible that talks about the Trinity. The reason why Christians adopted this is because their pre-Christian ancestors were steeped in this idea of a Trinity. And the triune aspect of the universe. And it was so deeply ingrained in them that they were unable to get rid of it. They had to manufacture dogma. And, if you talk to a Christian and say, can you show me in the New Testament where it talks about this Trinity? If you really analyze what they tell you objectively, it's just, really kind of ridiculous, the mental gymnastics they have to go to try and find it in the Bible, but it's not there. So point being is that we've got these three selves within us. It is the lower self. And I'm touching my navel here. In our navel, we have energetically where our subconscious and our unconscious minds are. And it is from this reservoir that a psychic power, as we understand it, is activated. The way it works is that you have this higher center. This higher center is not you. You are your soul. This higher center is another being in and of itself that is here to help you, which has a direct connection to you. You can think of it as your evolved self, your future self, or you can think of it as a guiding force. It doesn't really matter. But it sits up here in this area, connected to your third eye, and this is an antenna. This antenna, your higher self, gets information from the gods, from the ancestors, from the elves, from the higher beings. Your higher intuition comes from up here. And this energy is then transferred directly to the lower self, where the dwarves reside, the energies of emotional power. They are made up of life force energy that has, this is where our emotional reactions happen. We feel it in our heart sometimes, but it really happens here. The heart is the seat of joy, which is really the only true emotion that there is in the world. We'll talk in the universe. Joy is a constant. And so we need to be following our true soul essence in order to be attached to that. It doesn't mean you have to be in bliss and giddy all the time. It just means that you operate, that this is the guiding force in your life. You seek this joy. So if you're sad, if you're depressed, many of us are, many of us have been, this is part of the challenge. If you're sad, depressed, you have dysfunction, you have pain and misery, sadness, all this kind of stuff. It's not that you're a bad or unevolved person, but it does mean that there is potentially past life karmic, what's the word I want to use? Conflict and or present life conflict. You are in conflict with your own essence. So let me just, before we go any further, I'll just address this very quickly. People who see the world as this cruel place, and they see life as this horrible punishment, and, if you have, trust me, I'm not judging you. I've experienced that. I spent a huge chunk of my life with that feeling and struggling with that attitude. So I'm not judging you. But if you have this, it's a very simple cause. You are in conflict with your true soul essence. And the challenge of human life that you've chosen to undertake, you all chose to be here. The challenge you have chosen to undertake is to face that challenge of this conflict and resolve this conflict. And the way you resolve this conflict is to follow your true joy at the expense of everything else in the universe, including your own physical life. This is why my ancestors said that if you die in battle, you go to Valhalla. Because it means if you die or are willing to die to achieve your greatest happiness, you will be in the full integrity of your soul, and that is Valhalla. Valhalla is not something after death. It is here now as well. So if you die and you are not in the integrity of your soul, things aren't going to magically change for you. You will get an opportunity to address these things in the underworld, and you will be able to go through some healing, but that conflict will follow you into the next life. That's why the only way to achieve enlightenment is by achieving your full joy, your full true orlog, your true destiny, which is what gives you the greatest joy. So, I don't know how I got on that, but it's an important thing. So, the lower self is where all of the divination happens. And as we talked about, if you want to go back and watch what we talked about yesterday, you can see all the different ways that The lower self can cause us to misunderstand, to misinterpret, or to be outright deceived by our own narcissism and think that we are receiving information from the universe. Now, ideally, when all three of the selves, Odin, Vili, and Ve, higher self, lower self, and middle self, are free of conflict and they are in communication with each other, then information will come to the higher self will give it to the lower self, and the lower self will give it to the soul, which is your conscious mind, and the soul will make decisions on how to react to that information. So all that happens here in the soul. But if the lower self is conflicted, or if it is blocked, or whatever words you want to use, then the soul can get conflicting information, can get false information, because the same process that we experience on the human level, where we have an intuition, where we predict the future, or we have an intuition about what we should do, or we see something in someone's aura, or we feel, especially if, empathic abilities in other people. This comes from the lower self. If the lower self is conflicted, if the lower self is not clean, if the lower self is not functioning at its highest, then we run the risk of mistaking our own fears, which we project onto the world, which is, by the way, what happens when people see reptilian beings. If you see reptilian beings and you see them out in the world, that is literally a projection that is coming out of you. It's coming out of your lower self because you are in conflict with your own unconscious issues, and the reptilian brainstem, which is where all the reptilians exist, that becomes projected out into your world. So if you have a fear of them, if you see them everywhere, if you're obsessed with them, it means that you are in conflict in your lower self, and your narcissistic fears, you are projecting them out into the world. So what does this have to do with runes? My experience with the runes are that there are the same pitfalls with runic divination as there is with other types of divination, including tarot and things like that. One basic rule is this. If you really want to be able to do runic divination without, with the least amount of risk of being misled, is to do it for other people. Don't do runes for yourself. I mean, I try to do, I teach rune divination. There was a time when that's all I did. My entire living was to take phone calls from people who wanted me to, whatever, a psychic phone. And I'm not psychic that way, but I used runes for that. Now, they didn't know that, but that's what I was using. And by the way, it was amazing. I would look at the runes. They would ask me a question. I would have no idea what the answer was. I'd put the runes out in front of me, and I'd look at them, and I would simply just interpret the runes that were in front of me. And on the other end of the phone, people were like, "Oh my God, you're so amazing. How did you know that?" Well, I didn't. The runes did. And so doing it for other people is the best way to get the clearest answers. When you do any kind of divination for yourself, you run into problems because you have an emotional agenda. You want to know if a relationship is going to work out. What is she thinking about me? What is he thinking about me? What's going to happen between us? That's a really good example because you have a strong emotional agenda to have things work out the way you want them to. So you run the risk of influencing the reading simply because you're not clear. Now, when you do it for other people, and by other people I mean doing it for payment, and I don't care what the payment is. I don't care if it's money. I don't care. There has to be some exchange of energy. And it has to be an exchange of energy that you are comfortable with. If it's not enough for you, then you won't be clear. You'll have an unconscious agenda. You'll want something more from the client, which means you won't be clear. When you're not clear, the gods and the ancestors won't speak through you. Because the gods and the ancestors, the higher beings, the spirit guides, whatever word you want to use, they don't have an agenda. They're just here to help. And they're seeing you as the spiritual practitioner as the window through which they want to give their information to whoever is coming to you. So if you have your own emotional agenda, or if you aren't clear, then they don't. I'm telling you, they just fold their hands and they don't do anything. And then it is meaningless. Whatever tarot cards or whatever rune cards you put out can be meaningless because, you know, the ancestors aren't speaking through you. They've got their hands folded and they're like, we're not going to do this until you're clear. So we talked about this yesterday. In fact, I lost at least probably one subscriber over it, maybe more, because I was very adamant that if you're going to do any kind of spiritual work, healing, divination, counseling, energy work, I don't care what it is, you have to. This is not me talking. This is the gods. Gods have made it very clear to me. This is a spiritual, energetic truth. You do not have the right to negotiate this or to change this. It is not arbitrary. If you do any kind of spiritual work, there must be an exchange of energy. And I don't care if it's tobacco or a blanket or money or whatever the hell it is. But what is most important about this is that you have to be comfortable with it. You know, the New Age kind of look at it, you know, people that want to pretend to be Native Americans, they will, you know, I don't take money, but, you know, give tobacco. Oh, I don't take money, but give blankets. Give us. That's because that's what Native Americans, before they integrated financially into the United States system, those were the practical, everyday things that they needed. They needed tobacco for their ceremonies. You know, tobacco had value. They needed blankets. They needed skins. They needed a knife. They needed something of practical value. For us to look at it as though, well, this is a spiritual exchange of energy, but money is evil, is nonsense. Because the bottom line is that you are a physical being and you need practical things to live in this world. So to try and be super spiritual and deny this in yourself is false spirituality. And it comes from codependence. You're kissing people's asses, trying to look spiritual, and you don't want to offend people. And so I'll just take a donation, or I'll just, you know, and somebody got really upset with me yesterday because I said a donation is not good enough unless you make the decision about what the donation is, you know, a $5 donation or a $10 donation, which is the same as saying, I'm charging you $10. It doesn't matter. If you're not comfortable with whatever that gift is, you are going to have an unconscious resentment, and you're going to wish you had more. And the danger is, what will happen is you will start to emotionally, you will want an emotional connection. And if you're not conscious of that, then you will become an emotional vampire. This is why you take money to protect your client. Now, when this happens and you're satisfied, the $20, the $50, the tobacco, the whatever it is, and you really honestly want that and need that, and you're happy to get it, now you're clear. You don't have any agendas, and now the gods say, now I can work through you because your ego's out of the way. To do it for free, unless you're doing it as a conscious act of sacrifice for your own karmic issues, which you can't tell anybody about. Unless you're doing it for that reason, then you run the risk of corrupting the connection. This is why I you know, when people work with me and they study with me and they think they're not ready, but they want to become a rune reader, but they don't feel that they know anything, I say, I don't care, go charge. How much do you charge per hour? And they'll say something and I'll say, you know, you probably want more, you know, and then we find something that they're comfortable with. And it doesn't matter whether you know what you're doing or not. Once you set that amount and you charge for your work, You learn. The gods show up. Somebody asked me yesterday, do I go into a shamanic state when I do my readings? And I said, no, I don't consciously seek to go into a shamanic state. I will, if I'm doing a rune reading, I will ask Odin, Vili, and Ve as I'm shuffling the rune cards. I'll ask Odin, Vili, and Ve to come and bring their knowledge, their wisdom, and their power. And then what will happen is I will get intuitions as I'm looking at the rune reading. And I'll start to have intuitions. Sometimes I'll have really intense intuitions, but it's not like my eyes roll back into my head and I just get this sometimes a very strong intuition, and I know it's not coming from me because I don't know anything about these people. This is how it works. This is the gods working through you. The runes, when you're doing divination, are the gateway for you to turn yourself off and let the gods speak through you. So let's talk about what the essence of the runes are, which is the title of this. What are the essence of the runes? As we know from history, runes had been used as as an alphabet. It's interesting, you think about it, and we want to call it like a primitive alphabet. I saw something on YouTube, sometimes the ridiculousness of YouTube. I saw something on YouTube as I was, just screwing around, because I look at other people's videos, I see what's popular on YouTube, and I end up doing my own thing anyway. But there was one on the runes, and so I clicked on it, and somebody said something about that I don't even know who, they had no idea what they were talking about, but they said something about, they found a hammer. It was a Thor's hammer. It was an ancient Thor's hammer, and somebody said these people were illiterate, which is why they carved runes into it. What a ridiculously stupid thing to say. Runes are alphabet. You can't know what the runes are without knowing how to write. If you're writing runes, it means you're literate. You're not literate in maybe the Roman alphabet. You're literate in the Germanic alphabet. It had the same function. The first Gothic Bible, the Bible written for the Goths, was written entirely in runes. So it's an alphabet. It's not some primitive, we look at it as it's, you could write the same thing you write in any other language. You just use that Germanic language. While I'm on that subject, briefly, now we talk about this in all of my rune books. If you're not familiar with my books, you can go up here where it says michaelwilliamdenny.com. Go there and you can see all of my books. I have, how many rune books? At least 3, I don't even remember. I have 3 rune books out there. Now, one of the things that's interesting about the runes, which is unique to the runes, is the order of the sounds, the order of the syllables. Now, your basic academic professor, and most rune experts, even the ones that teach runes and, the Asatru rune experts, even these people will say to you, they'll parrot back to you what you find in academia, which, by the way, is not rooted in any historical evidence or fact. It's an assumption, pure conjecture. What they will tell you is that as the primitive, uneducated Germanic tribes people, as they were wanting to fit in with Mediterranean society, advanced civilization, they adopted they attempted to copy Mediterranean alphabets. And so their attempt at copying the Mediterranean alphabets was the runes, the Elder Futhark. And here's the thing about that. All of the Mediterranean alphabets, including the Greek and I think even the Hebrew, they follow the same progression, A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. Alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. That, there's some difference because some of the syllables are different, but it's the same progression. And so you find this all over, all over the Mediterranean, they adopted this same progression. So if the Germanic tribes people were trying to copy that, they did a really bad job, because the order of the syllables is completely different. Futhark, futhark. Futhark Gebounjo. There's no similarity. It's not like they missed a couple. It is a completely different progression. So that means that either they were complete idiots and they didn't know what the hell they were doing, or they deliberately chose to put it in a different order, or that order, futhark Gebounjo, that order was a pre-existing order that they had within their society. I am opting for the third one because the first one obviously doesn't make any sense. They weren't that stupid. They're perfectly capable of putting Ansuz, Berchtana, Kenaj, Dayaj. They would have been perfectly capable of putting it in that order if they chose to, but they didn't. It doesn't make any sense that they would choose to put it in a different order, because if the whole idea was to copy the Mediterranean alphabet, that doesn't make any sense either. There's another thing about this that is interesting that to me gives me the absolute, I'm completely convinced. It gives me the feeling that the runes as a verbal oral tradition already existed in the order of Fehu, Uruj, Thurisaj, Futhark. That already existed as an oral tradition before they decided to try and turn it into an alphabet. And the reason I say that is because at the time that these alphabets were coming into being in the Mediterranean world, the Germanic tribes all over northwestern Europe were not a unified country. There wasn't one central government that was making, proclamations about how things would be done, which is what happened in Rome. You have the Roman alphabet because Rome was a centralized government and blah, blah, blah. They were warring tribes. Some of them, were separated by long distances, and some of the cultural and the very different. So what would have happened is you would have had different futharks in different orders for the different tribes, if that's what they were. The fact that you have the elder futhark, and this was universal among all of the different tribes, Germanic tribes, this tells me that this is a very ancient order of these sounds that were used probably from the beginning, whenever the so-called Germanic tribes, coalesced, and whenever the hell that, however many thousands of years ago the Germanic tribes separated or evolved away from the Celtic and the other Indo-European tribes. So this is a very ancient tradition that goes back to the genesis of the Germanic mindset. So to me, this tells us that this was something that existed for a very long time. And so this order, the reason why I use the elder futhark is because this all leads me to believe that this is a self-contained energetic science that shamans discovered. And it is unique among all other alphabets. There is no other alphabet that goes in that order. It doesn't exist. So this is something that it goes beyond cultural differences. It means that this is a unique science that was given to the Germanic peoples, and it was a gift that they were eventually meant to share with the rest of the world, which is where we live now. The reason why I'm a syncretist is because it is my belief that we are, in terms of the human race, our destiny as the human race is, now that we are a global community. I'm sorry for all the right-wing nutbags that want to go off on globalism. It's too late. We are already a global society. Get over it. The fact that we are a global community now means that the way for the human race is to go forward is for us to come together and to share our knowledge. And our knowledge that is unique to the Germanic peoples is the Elder Futhark, is the runes. So let's talk about what the runes are energetically. What is the essence of the runes? The name runes has been translated as mystery, but I like this one better, whispers. I like this because the runes are syllables. They're not just symbols. They're syllables. They were syllables first. It was an oral tradition that was taught first without any writing, without any symbols. They just taught the syllables themselves and all of the meaning associated with those syllables and the energies, because they are gateways to energies, these syllables. I forgot what I was saying. What was I saying? I was saying, I can't remember. So these energies are gateways. These syllables are gateways to fundamental seed powers in the universe that create the universe. Which is why when you focus on a rune, when you chant a specific rune or focus on a symbol of one of the runes, you are invoking a seed power that is the fundamental pillars of manifested reality. So let's talk about why are the runes so powerful? Why are they so magical? And I believe this goes back to when human beings actually began to create speech, more than just vocalizations. I mean, we have all kinds of vocalizations that, no matter where you are, people will understand. Everybody, a baby crying has the same effect anywhere around the world. Screaming, sighing. We have ways of communicating through sound that's universal, that we all understand. So that there's something that went beyond that. And I believe that there was a time, if we go back to the Golden Age, which would have been tens and tens of thousands of years ago, human beings didn't need to speak to communicate. That there was, we could communicate telepathically just from an emotional standpoint, big chunks. You may have experienced this if you've ever had any downloads from the universe, if you've ever been communicated to by higher beings. They don't give you sentences and paragraphs, at least they don't do it for me. When I get a download, I get this big chunk of information that I intuitively know, and it's so deep within me, and it's very vast. And then what I end up having to do is then try and put that information into words. I need to, unpack it. And the spirits communicate this way. If they have to communicate in language, it means that because we're not capable of, downloading, we may get overwhelmed by it. But the true spiritual communication is not in words, chunks of words. It will be in concepts, in tightly packed feelings. Boom, instantly. We get all this information instantly. So there came a point in human evolution where, as we, the Earth revolves around the galactic center. When we're close to the galactic center, then we're at the golden age, which means that, we can just think what we want. We don't have to speak, and we can communicate with each other, and we have all kinds of spiritual powers and blah, blah, blah. We're 100% connected to the essence of life force energy. And as we orbit away from the galactic center, then the furthest away is what's called Kali Yuga in the Vedic, which means the time of darkness, when only 25% of the population has any inkling of what spirituality is. 75% are in darkness, which is why the Middle Ages, which was the apex, the center of Kali Yuga, was the Middle Ages. That's why the Middle Ages was such a horrible time to live, because 75% of the population was not connected, to their higher self whatsoever. And it's also why Christianity flourished, and why Christianity, supposedly this religion of grace and love, was associated with so much killing and maiming and destruction and slavery. That's why. So we've moved out of that, and we're in the next phase, which is called Dvapara Yuga, which means that half and half. As we get deeper into Dvapara Yuga, eventually half of the population will be, quote, awakened, and the other half will be in darkness, which is why our politics is so schismed, and why there's no middle ground. You're either a leftist, whatever, or you're basically, a fascist. We're just getting to that. That's just the reality of it. You're either a fascist or you're an anarchist, and there's no middle ground anymore. It's because we're in Dvapara Yuga, and the last bit of Kali Yuga is making a last stand. So that's why all this crap is going on right now in our political world. So as we get closer now, we are getting, again, closer to the Golden Age. What I wanted to say, which I got sidetracked, was that eventually, as human beings evolved, it became necessary for us to magically influence our reality. And this is when speech was invented. And, the Latin word to spell means to cast a spell. It means literally when you're writing, a sentence with letters, it was originally a magical act to create something, which means that originally when we spoke words to create. This is why the Abrahamic tradition has God spoke, because this is an unconscious memory of when we were learning how to speak our reality into our existence. And this is why curses had, such power. You didn't curse people unless you really meant it, because you had the power to affect people with your negative energy. And so runes go back to this time, and this is why I believe that this was an oral tradition where probably the males would teach the younger males how to go through making these sounds and how to use these sounds to magically call forth things and create things, whether it was fehu, resources, uruj, power, thurisaj, which was protective energy, ansuj, to connect with the gods, raito, the power of right, righteousness, right, R-I-T-E, ritual, kenaj, knowledge and ability. These were just things that we used. And when you look at the letters in especially seed sounds, like if you take seed sounds and you look at them from the runic perspective, you see what the essence is of the seed sound. So I'll give you an example of, when I was studying mantra, Vedic mantra, what you will find a lot of times from Vedic teachers is they will say that the seed sounds, so there are numerous seed sounds, like Om is a seed sound, Shring, Kling, Rang, these are seed sounds. And they will say that these seed sounds are nonsense syllables. But what this means is that even the Vedics have forgotten, because they're not nonsense syllables. They are the original, they're like runes. They're the original syllables of essence. You know, for instance, there's a seed sound called string, string, and this is and I feel it as I say it. This is a Jupiter sound, and it has the same essence as the English word stream. And what is a stream? It is a small flowing river. It's about the flow of energy, the flow of nourishment. And if you chant stream, you will get this. It means that even in English, you know, our Germanic ancestors were using these seed sounds to describe things in their environment. I could go on. There's a lot more. I mean, it's just interesting. Another one is, you know, in English to this day, when we want to talk about what does a ghost say, we say a ghost says boo. But that's not what ghosts do. Ghosts don't say boo. Ghosts are boo. And B-H-U, boo, in Sanskrit means the earthly plane, and it also means spirits. It means ghosts. So it means that in English today, we are still doing a seed sound saying the same thing that our Indo-European ancestors have been saying for probably tens of thousands of years. When they want to say ghost, they go boo. They're pointing to it. It's right there. They're not saying that's what ghosts are. Boo, ghost. So now when we want to make, you know, in Halloween and we want to scare somebody, we go boo. We're saying ghost. Earth spirit. These seed sounds are the essence of the first emergence of magic, which is to use our speech as a magical tool. And I believe as human beings were evolving and using speech, they only spoke when they wanted to create something magical. And the rest of the time they didn't speak. Again, another tradition that our Germanic ancestors had, which is completely opposite to how white people function today, is that when you were going through forests, you were not supposed to speak. Because the forests were the homes of the spirits. And they had power. And you did not want to mess with that. So if you were traveling through a forest, you didn't speak. If you were traveling on a horse and you fell off your horse, you had to crawl the rest of the way out. You did not dare stand up and walk through there like you owned the place. And now look at what we do now. We take these giant machines and we just chop whole forests down without even thinking about it. We've completely walked away from that understanding of who we are. Okay, so let's see. There might be some other things I put here on my outline that I want to talk about. Here's another thing I want to say, which is inherent in what I'm saying now, is that runes are not arbitrary. This is one of my biggest pet peeves when I listen to so-called rune magic experts. They will tell you that, in their books, I mean, you can read books by these so-called experts, and it's in these books. It's ridiculous. This comes from the post-Christian desacralization of the natural world. And they will say that the runes are arbitrary. They may not use these words, but they will teach this. And they'll say that you have to load the runes with your intention. And depending on what you load the rune with, it will have a different intention. There's even one guy who's supposedly the big expert in all of Asatru. And he says that, and again, he has no evidence for this. There's no historical evidence for this whatsoever. But he says that the original rune magicians loaded the runes with their intentions, and we should follow theirs. So we use their interpretation of these symbols so that we can stay in alignment with them. But if you have a different understanding, then you can put your own understanding on it. What a load of crap. The runes are the runes. These essences that exist in the universe are not arbitrary. And if rune magic is a science, It means that shamans saw in the universe these sounds existing and that they had powers within them, and they were simply just, recording what they saw and experienced. If the runes are something that we arbitrarily create that makes us uniquely Germanic because we chose to create this arbitrary system, like we do with governments and with nations, we arbitrarily create these borders and these nations, which only exist because we choose to create them. If it's just arbitrary like that, then it's nonsense and it's worthless. Now, I say this because I'm a very practical guy. When it comes to spirituality, if I can't practically use it, if I don't have a practical experience with it, I discard it. And if the runes didn't have power, for me, I wouldn't bother with them. I wouldn't teach them. The runes, for me, are so powerful that, as you know, I'm not specifically focusing on any one rune. It's because I don't mess with that power unless I'm absolutely committed to having that fire, that essence, that pillar of the universe in my life. And when I've taught the runes, even if it's a supposedly good rune, my whole life, my whole being gets inflamed with it, and it's very intense. It's not an easy thing for me. This is another reason why you don't see any runes tattooed anywhere on my body, and why I tell people, if you want to tattoo runes on your body, go ahead. I sure as hell wouldn't do it. I have far too much respect for that power. Maybe that's just me. Maybe the runes are not as intense with you, but for me, they're incredibly intense. I just begin to play around with them, and the power is, it just my identity and my ego starts coming apart at the seams. Again, on this idea that runes are a science that's discovered is in the lore. Odin didn't invent the runes. Odin discovered them. When he sacrificed himself to himself, and this is again my experience, when I chant runes, when I work with them, I end up dying to myself on some level, and it's not pleasant for me. And I believe this is how Odin experienced it. When Odin died to himself, the result of that is that the runes appeared to him. He discovered the runes. Screaming, he took them up. Screaming. He didn't go, oh, wow, these are really great. He was screaming. He was coming apart at the seams as he was finding these runes and incorporating them and understanding them. And when, according to the lore, he's the one that gives them to us. Woden, he who is consumed with the ecstasy of self-awareness. Wod, the ecstasy of self-awareness. En, made of. Woden, he who is made of the ecstasy of self-awareness. But in order to have that, you have to have no identity. You have to have no ego. This is why Woden is seen as a god of rage. He's not a god of rage. He is fully, completely, 100% inflamed and empowered. Those of us who are limited, we have an ego. We are solidified into an ego identity of who we are. When we come into the presence of he who is consumed with shamanic ecstasy, he has no limiting identity. He is one with everything. When we get in touch with that, it starts to tear us to pieces. We experience that as violence. And so we experience him as a god of rage. But he's not. He's a god of joy. He's a god of intense joy. And that's what he represents. I was, again, whenever I'm doing research, and I try and look for pictures to put on the YouTube thumbnail, and I found some pictures of Odin, and I find it interesting because people want to present him as this staunch, either this warrior with a beard and because that's people's projection. Especially the more right you go into Asatru, the more tough guy they want to make him into. I don't see him like that. I see him as a very joyful, happy, mischievous, almost like Loki kind of person. And of course, he is Loki's blood brother. It's amazing to me. I even remember saying that on a video, that Odin is Loki's blood brother, and Asatru people message me trying to tell me that Loki is not Odin's blood brother. And it's like, you haven't even read your own lore. It's very clear. Loki and Odin are blood brothers. Okay, so those are some of my thoughts about the runes and the essence of the runes. I'll be happy to take your questions. Let me take a look and see if I need to make the little speech here. Okay, so I will make my little speech. So if you're new to the channel, welcome to the thunderwizard.com YouTube channel. These Q&As are just that. They're question and answers. So I do not want to scroll through your comments, your editorial suggestions. I don't need you to chime in. I don't need a cheering section. I want to get to the questions, and the more that you write your opinion or say hello to your friends, the more time I have to spend scrolling through, and I miss people's questions. So that would be what I would appreciate. Don't communicate on here unless you're going to ask me a question. If you're going to ask me a question, write the word question, and then write a well thought out question that makes sense. And preferably ask it from your own need. You know, ask for yourself, what you need for yourself. That way I can best help you. All right, so we'll be back in a couple of minutes, and we'll take any questions. Okay, let's take a look and see what we've got in terms of questions here. Brandon Little, question. Heart energy on the planet right now. What the hell is going on with it? I don't know. I'd appreciate a more well thought out question. I don't really know what you're asking me. It sounds like you're having an experience with heart energy on the planet, and I'm not sure what you're asking me, so if you can be more clear with your question, I might be able to help you. Let's see, what other questions do we have? OLI, you're asking a question. Please write the word question before you ask your question, because otherwise I might miss it, and I don't want to miss your question. How do you reach the third eye? Don't worry about it. If you want to know how to reach the third eye, become a happy, well-adjusted, mature person. That's the most spiritual thing you can do. The rest of that, if you really want to know how to do that, spend some time watching my channel, watching the videos on my channel, do the energy work. Okay, everybody, if you're new to this and you want to know the main meditative energy practice, you can go and type in Huul breath, H-U-U-L, breath. Type it into any search engine and do what's in that video. I will teach you how to do that. And then I recommend you go and find out the books that I have and read my books, michaelwilliamdenny.com. It's right up here. You can see it up there somewhere, michaelwilliamdenny.com. So if you're new to the channel, I say this to everybody, put the time and effort to watch my videos, see what it is that I teach, so that you will be able to ask a question more intelligently. So asking me this general question about how to reach the third eye, it's a great question, but it tells me you haven't put the time and effort to read and to watch what I teach, okay? Because I teach so many methods on how to do that. So put the time and effort, watch my videos, start with the Huul breath and see what happens, okay? Thank you for your question and welcome to the channel. What going on here? Yeah, Skyclad Faye, your data didn't want to work in the beginning. There's something that's happening when I log on with whatever. It tells me that I have the wrong resolution, and then about, almost 2 minutes into it, it clears itself up, and that's happened 2 or 3 times now. I don't know why. Harold Dale, question. In Celestial Qigong, if you're not familiar with that, you're going to want to go to the second one up here, qigong.thunderwizard.com. It's the most powerful energy practice that I'm aware of that can be taught through video. In Celestial Qigong, there's an exercise where males put their right thumb on top and females their left thumb on top. What is the reason for this? It's very simple. Males are, generally speaking, the masculine, and the masculine is the right side of the body, which means that for men, the right, you put the right thumb on top of the left because the masculine is the dominant force. In females, it's the other way around. They put the left thumb on top because, generally speaking, in females, the feminine force is dominant. That's all. Rami, question, is there any similar usage for the runes in India? I don't know what you're asking. The runes are the runes no matter what country you're in. So, just if you're in India and you want to use the runes, use the runes. All spiritual energies, including the runes, are not they're not exclusionary. They're not racist. Each race, if you will, has been given its own mastery, its own task, its own energy secrets that it has been learning for tens of thousands of years. And now that we're in the Aquarian age, the destiny is for all of us to come together, what Sethicus Boza calls the Wisdom Council. The Wisdom Council is to come together and to share our knowledge and to syncretize our knowledge. So the runes are not the same as mantra, but they serve similar functions, and they can empower each other. Mantra is its own science, and runes is its own science. We can talk about that too. Skyclad Faye question. Soon I will be taking your rune reading course. I'm going to make my own runes. Is there a specific ritual or way to making them? Making it from a whale rib? No. There's some people prefer to do certain things. Our ancestors According to the Roman historian Tacitus, one way, maybe the way, which is why a lot of people do it this way. It was said that our ancestors would took square pieces of bark and carve the runes into that. Red is often the color associated with it, and my belief for that is because runes are a fire element. All runes are, even if the runes like Lagouge, which deal with water, we're still dealing with a fiery element. So I believe that's why. So if you really want to be traditional, that would be the way to go. Having said that, using a whale rib sounds really cool, and you know, if you do it with reverence, that's really all that you need to do. You know, you listen, you talk to Odin, and you ask for Odin Villian Ve to guide you in that, since Odin is the one who discovered the runes. And you know, I haven't had a problem. I've used all different kinds of runes made out of all different kinds of things, and they all work. So no, there isn't one specific way in my experience to do it. Natalie K, please just you know, ask questions. This isn't a free-for-all. I know that a lot of people want to come on here and do all kinds of free-for-all thing, but all right, so OLI, I'm not sure this is the right place for you. We're not going to get into your form of politics. And whenever, by the way, whenever anybody cusses on there, YouTube automatically takes your message out. So if you want to write some, you know, curse-filled thing on there, you know, YouTube is going to automatically pull it out of there. So anyway, we're not going to get into your thing. All right, so let's see here. So, Trevi McTrev, I'm not interested in your politics. I'm going to put you in a timeout. If you got a question, an honest question, I'll answer you. All right. See, now I have to see, I got to scroll through all this crap to get to the question. Mad Sweeney's Beard, question. Do you think using the runes for frequent divination / magic / rituals is okay, or should they be for special things? You can use them as much as you want. I encourage you to experiment with them and use them as much as you want. You know, if you use them with a lack of reverence, you'll get the blowback. You know, as my partner once said, the greatest thing she said is, you're the one that has to live with it. So you're the one that has to live with it. So, but having said that, if you've got an honest desire to experiment with it, go for it. You know, one of the things that I write about, one of my students a long time ago, one of my first rune students, he was a young guy in high school, and he had some health issues, which was probably associated with some other things. But he wanted more health, so he started chanting Uruj. And he was chanting Uruj over and over and over again because he knows that Uruj has a connection to strength and to health. And what ended up happening is that he became sex crazed, because Uruj is a sexual rune as well. It's the rune especially of, like if there's one rune for testosterone, it's Uruj. And you know, both men and women, when you get a lot of testosterone, you become really sex crazed. And so he was like, and I said, yeah, man, I mean, these things are powerful. You know, I mean, hindsight is 20/20. You were sincere in your efforts, but this is how you learn. You know, so go ahead. You'll find out real quick when something is a good idea and when the power is going to be too much for you. Adam Shannon questions, similarly to how you gain power with Qigong, could I gain power playing my music? I don't understand your question. They're two completely different things. You know, what you're saying in that question is that you feel as though music empowers you, and you're wanting me to co-sign that for you. So go for it. You know, Qigong is Qigong, and music is music. If you gain power by playing music, it means that is, at least for now, your soul desire, and you should go after it. You don't need to ask me that question. I think you already know the answer to it. Abdel Hadi Nadif question, how to break the spell? What spell? If you are under the influence of a spell, it means that you are not aware of your own conscious and unconscious issues. The only way that somebody or something can harm you or take control of you is if you unconsciously invite it. Bottom line is, it means you need counseling. This is true for anybody. Whether you're demon possessed or you think that somebody's doing a magical spell, you probably need counseling, which is one of the things that I do. If you want a counseling session with me for any reason, go to career.thunderwizard.com and I will work with you if I have time. Christine Mullins question, what resource do you suggest for runic study? You're new to my channel, yes? The best resource that I can tell you is to go to runecertification.thunderwizard.com. You see it up there? That you will get access to all of the videos that I have made, either private or public, about the runes, about rune divination. I have 3 books on the runes, so you're obviously new to my channel. Go to michaelwilliamdenny.com. You see it right there, and you'll see all of my books. You'll see 3 of my rune books. I'm obviously going to promote my understanding of the runes. I think I'm the best resource. If I didn't think I was the best, then I should have no business writing books about it. So that's where you should go. Rune Shamanism, start with that. Go to Rune Divination, and then go to Advanced Rune Shamanism. Those are the 3 books that I teach. Question, Carly Beatty, question. From what I understand, there are a few slightly different alphabets in regards to runes. Is there a specific one you use? Yes, Carly, you're talking about different runic alphabets. The original runic alphabet is called the Elder Futhark. There was a time, our earliest records of runic writings show that all the Germanic tribes spoke a similar language, and that's why they all used the same alphabet. So when you're looking at Old English runes or the younger futhark or the Gothic futhark, you're seeing what has happened when the Germanic language, there was one Germanic language, when that started to change through differences in pronunciation. Like the younger futhark there are runes that aren't on there. It means that that syllable was no longer being used in their language. Like for instance, like if you ask a guy from Sweden to pronounce the word Thor, he's going to call it Tor, T-H, Tor. His pronunciation has changed. It's altered from the original Elder Futhark. And so they no longer needed that for writing, so they changed the letters around to fit their dialect. That's all you're seeing. You know, the Old English runes, the Anglo-Saxon runes, has extra things thrown in there because they were pronouncing things differently. And so you have repeats and all that kind of stuff. So there's nothing wrong with them, but the Elder Futhark is made up of 3 8s. And 8 is a sacred number, and 3 is a sacred number. And so when you start taking away or adding, you change things around. It no longer has the same complete magical power. So that's why I use the Elder Futhark. And I recommend that if you're going to study Germanic magic, you should be using the Elder Futhark. You can use the other ones. I got nothing against it. I just think that it's like taking a perfect equation and you start messing with it a little bit. It might be kind of off here, there, it might be on in other places, but if it works, don't fix it. Bottom line is, the only reason that we ended up with different futharks is people their language, they started pronouncing things differently, and they had different dialects, and those alphabets reflect their dialect. Doesn't reflect the actual runes themselves. John Burnham, question. The millennial age groups over here were quizzed week-led on the virtues and how they apply to growth. I'm having a hard time. I mean, you can see I put some effort into writing things clearly and spelling them right. I'm already confused. The millennial age groups over here were quizzed week-led on the virtues and how they apply to growth. Do these apply in any way to rune divination? I've only read them on myself. I don't know what you're talking about. Are you talking about the 9 noble virtues of Asatru? I'm not Asatru. So the 9 noble virtues are something that was created. Asatru is a modern religion that was created in the late 60s, early 70s by I think at least one guy who was an American. And the main thrust for it was because of political reasons. These were conservative, racially exclusive people who were looking to justify their politics, and they used ancient Norse traditions to justify that, which is why Asatru are so right-wing. It's because it's mainly a political group. The word folkish, by the way. Do you know who used the word folkish first? The Nazis. It's a Nazi word. That's why folkish people tend to be racist, even if they don't see themselves that way. You know, we're delving into that same political crap. It's got nothing to do with religion. It doesn't mean that there's, everything they do is not valid. It just means that there's a reason why. Look at Druids. Druids, for the most part, are very progressive in their thinking. It's because the people who started that were progressive in their thinking. The people who started Asatru were very conservative in their thinking. So the 9 noble virtues are something that they made up because I think they wanted to appeal to people who were coming out of Christianity who used the 10 commandments. So the 9 noble virtues are sort of like a made-up 10 commandments for Germanic pagans. There was no such thing as the 9 noble virtues before this new age religion that people call Asatru. I know I offended a bunch of people, but tough shit. Deal with it. Okay. Weekly fat finger. So, John, didn't we kind of get into an argument last night? I'm interested to know if come on. The way I know that you're interested in what I teach is if I can tell by your question that you put time and effort into watching my videos. Because if you ask me questions that aren't related to my videos or my books, then that tells me that you're not familiar with what I teach. So you got nothing better to do and you come on to some YouTube guy's channel. And I really want to help people who want to learn what I'm teaching. Okay? So if you're interested, ask me a question based on what I teach. I will be far more motivated to help you. And I certainly, again, I don't want to get into another personal. I have no interest in fighting with anyone. Michael, question. I know all the runes are powerful. What one would you say is the most powerful? I wouldn't say that. Nothing personal, but that's a illogical question. And why do you need the most powerful one? Are you so advanced that you have to have the most powerful one? It shows an immaturity in your question. It shows an immaturity in your seeking. Start with the basics. When you go to train, here's an old, kung fu thing. You want to train in kung fu, you've probably heard this before. The kung fu student goes to the master and says, Sifu, if I practice for an hour a day, every day, how long will it take me to get my black sash? And the kung fu master says, that will take 10 years. And he goes, that's too long. What if I practice 2 hours a day? He says, that'll take 20 years. Start with the basics and learn the basics and put the discipline in the basics. There isn't one more rune that's powerful than the other. They're all part of one unit, and they're all powerful. They're all equally powerful. There may be one that you need in a specific moment more than the others, but that doesn't mean it's any more powerful. It just means that's the one that you need right now. Question, how do you recover from psychic attack? So go onto my channel and look for the videos where I talk about demon possession. It means, hang on one second. What it means is that, sorry, I got distracted. Psychic attack, if you're experiencing psychic attack, what that means is that your personal boundaries need help. Here's the thing, you cannot be attacked by anything, human or spiritual, unless you yourself have unconsciously invited that into your life. And the only way you invite that into your life is if there's some unresolved issues. We all have them. I'm not judging you. We all have them. But it means that you are creating in your external environment your internal state of being. So if you feel that something, or if something is actually attacking you, it means that you are attacking yourself. You are in conflict with yourself. So again, you can start with the basic energy thing that I teach here, which is the whole breath. I'll write it down here again. Go onto my channel and do that every day for 10 minutes a day. Okay? All right. No more questions at the moment. I am going to take a short break and come back. And if you have any questions about anything, I'll be happy to answer it. Even though, the best questions are ones that are associated with what I teach and well thought out questions. Those are the ones I respond to best. All right. Honest questions, meaning you have something you need to learn for yourself. And if I can feel that in your question, I'm going to be more motivated to help you. Okay? All right. So I'll be back in a couple minutes, and we'll see where we go from there. Alrighty, all right. I think I got a couple of questions, and then I want to talk to you about my experience of the difference between runic divination and other types of divination like tarot. All right, so let's take a look here and see. Compsognathi question. Can writing/drawing runes be incorporated into a practice, or is it better just to visualize or view them? Yes, of course. There's a whole science of runic magic that's done through carving runes, and there's bind rune magic. So, of course, there's a whole science. I mean, I don't teach about it because it's not something I've mastered. So I don't teach anything that I don't feel that I have mastery in. But yes, of course you can. Michael, question, can you explain the difference between a bind rune and a rune? Well, a bind rune is just a rune that has 2 or more runes in the symbol. So it's a more, complicated, like you could make a bind rune of a hool if you wanted to. You put them all into one symbol. And again, there's a whole science for bind runes and bind rune magic and all that kind of stuff. Skyclad Faye question, are runes more powerful on certain days like full moon? I don't know. That's not been my experience, but I'm open to that being the case. But I'm more inclined to say that it depends on the individual, that everybody's an individual, and if you are influenced by the moon like I am, because I have moon in my first house, I was born on the new moon, so the moon has a strong impact on me. If you are one that is impacted strongly by the moon, then you may, again, these sciences, the runes especially, are an infinite science. Anybody who claims to have mastered all of the runes is either lying, deluded, or ignorant. It's just not like astrology. Anybody who says they've mastered everything there is about astrology, same thing. You can't master that. There's just too much. It's too infinite. Runes are the same way. I mean, for me to make a blanket statement about that, everybody's different, and I recommend that maybe there's moon runes. What is it, the Hobbit movie where the elf queen is there and they find the runes and the full moon comes and the runes open up and on the map, none of that would surprise me. So my suggestion to you is you tell me, you go and experiment with the moon and runes and you come back and tell us. Skyclad Faye question, please explain the different energies, if there are, between runes and sigils. Runes are sigils. Sigil just means, a sign, a carved, or, a sign, a symbolic sign. Runes are a form, the written runes are a form of sigil, so there isn't any difference. Sigil just means symbolic sign that people use for magical purposes. Brenda Sutherland, please write the word question so I don't miss your question. Can you use the runes to help understand your karmic balance from past lives? Sure, why not? I would start with doing a reading. Again, as I said earlier, it's tough to do readings on yourself because you have an emotional agenda to hear certain things. So it's better if you go to somebody else and ask that question. Like you could go to runereadings.thunderwizard.com up here. You could go to there, get a reading from me, and ask me when I talk to you, you make that your question. By the way, when I do rune readings, one of the ways that I keep from influencing the reading is when I'm with a client, either personally or on the phone, I will say, you can have a specific question if you want. You don't have to, but don't tell me what it is. I don't want to know. And then I will just say, just tell me when you're clear on what your question is. And they say, okay, I've got it. Then I will do what I do, shuffle the runes or shake the runes, whatever I'm doing. And then I will put the 9 world rune layout in front of me, and I will interpret the runes as I see them based on what they're connected to. And then I will ask, what was your focus? And then from that, then I can go, oh, okay, now I really see what's going on. So it's best that, I mean, you can do it for yourself. Most people do, and sometimes it'll be accurate. A lot of readings I've done for myself have been crazy accurate. But you're better off asking somebody else because they don't have an agenda. Okay? But yes, of course you can. You can find out, definitely find out karmic balance from past lives. So before I answer any more questions, let me talk about what I wanted to say, which is the difference between runes and other forms of divination tools like tarot. Now, bear in mind, I am not an expert in tarot. So don't hold that against me. This is my experience. I've still gotten tarot readings. Tarot, from my experience, is purely for divination, at least when you're doing a reading, which means tell me about the future. Tell me about the essence of this. When you try to use the runes to say, tell me the future, the runes will definitely give you information, but the runes themselves are energies. So for instance, like to give you an example, when my fiance was dying, I wanted to know if she was going to die, obviously. And I would do readings to try and find out, and I'd get conflicting answers from the runes. And I realized as I was doing it that there is no rune for physical death. That the closest we get is the Yuhuaj rune, which means transformation from life to death. And that could mean somebody physically dying and transforming and becoming a spiritual being. It could also mean, dying shamanically and coming back to life. It could mean going through an emotional death and resurrection. So just because the death rune comes up, it doesn't mean physical death. Because the runes don't see that. There's no such thing as physical death because energy is infinite and energy is immortal. It's just a change of energy. So when you ask the ancestors or you use the runes for divination, you're going to get an energetic answer, which may sometimes be confusing. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean I sell it? Do I buy it? It's just telling you what the energy is going to do. One of the few times that you can be very specific, in my experience, is if you're doing, like, let's say somebody were to die, you might get the Perthro rune reversed, which is like a karmic ending. They're done with that life. That could mean they're going to physically die. But it also could mean that they are going to have a huge life change, which means they're going to have a karmic ending in a relationship, in a job. You have to look at the essence of what the energetic shift is and understand that it's like the runes are communications that's coming from another dimension. So when you try to take multi-dimensional energetic communications and put it into a three-dimensional world, we may get confusing answers or answers that go beyond our understanding. A lot of times, especially when I do readings on myself, I'm like, I don't know what that means. I don't know how to interpret that. Which again is another good reason to have somebody do the reading for you, because they're more likely to be able to interpret specifically for you. But the runes they're not, because the future is not fixed. The future is only influenced by the present. And so rune readings will tell you, based on what you're doing in the moment, how you are weaving a new future for yourself and what the energetic effects are going to be. So again, there's nothing specific. That's for me, that's my experience. Runes will not give you lottery numbers. They're not going to tell you exactly what's going to happen. They can only tell you based on what's going on now. If you keep doing what you're going to do, here's how the energy is going to be influenced in the future. So it's really about telling you what to do. It's, when you talk to a psychic, any true psychic, and you want them to tell you things like, when am I going to meet my husband and stuff like that, that means that you're already operating from a passive mindset, which says that things happen to me. Tell me when they're going to happen. So when people would ask me those kinds of questions, when am I going to find my husband? I'm like, I don't know. When do you want to find him? And then we can start talking about what you need to do. And then I'll look at a reading and say, you're blocked here, you need to work on that. But, you know, you want to sit on your ass and wait for Prince Charming to knock on your front door, it's probably not going to happen. You have to do something. The universe responds to your actions. So the runes being fire, which is the south, which is actions, the runes are very good at telling you what the result of your actions are, which includes your beliefs and your assumptions, but it also will give you great insight into what your actions should be and what those actions, how that will influence how you create your reality. All right, let's keep going with the questions. Cosmo Joe, giant blue question mark. In most traditions, there seems to be a primal alphabet which has power over creation because it is part of it like a cosmic programming language. Are these expressions of the same runes or different? Well, I didn't talk about this, but we can talk about the Vedic understanding of sounds and syllables, which is part of mantra science. I talked to you earlier. Runes are like seed sounds. They're not the same. Sometimes I guess they could be, if I haven't looked to see if there's exact correlations. Like there is one, let's get well, anyway. Answer your question again, I got sidetracked. Are these expressions of the same runes? Yes and no. So for instance, if we took the same syllables, you know, if we look at, you know, like I said, we look at the seed sound for the Jupiter essence of flowing, nurturing energy is called stream. And in English, we have a word called stream. It tells you exactly what that energy is. That's an old, ancient Indo-European word that's still in use today in English. But the Vedics call it a seed sound because they're so far removed from it. It's a seed sound to them. For us, it's still part of our language, which in some ways I find the Germanic tradition closer to the original primitive Indo-European shamanic religion. We see this in a lot, not in all ways, in some ways. So we could take that and we could take the, which would be if you were to, you know, you can translate this into runic language. It would be Sawol, would be Tiwaj, would be Raido, it would be Ingvaj, or excuse, Isa, and then Ingvaj. S-T-R-I-Ng. The end of seed sounds like the Om sound. You think it's spelled O-M. That M actually has a little dot over it, which means that you put the tongue to the roof of your mouth. So your lips are closed, but it's actually an Ng sound. It's the Ing rune. Om. So you know, if you'll see this written, sorry, I didn't put this out there. You'll see this written oftentimes as the stream seed sound. You'll see it written as stream, but it's pronounced stream. 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 So you could take that seed sound, you could look at Sawol, which is spirit, Tiwaj, which is highest awareness, Ar, which is Raido. Raido is the fire of following the spiritual law. Isa, which is the identity, the self-empowered identity. And then Ingvaj, which means energy that is condensed, that is creative energy, like the egg. String. So we can take the runes to analyze Vedic seed sounds because those sounds are the same. If they're not the same, then we're not talking about an energetic science, and then it's meaningless. So let's take another one. There's a seed sound for the fire, which is Rang. Again, this is you'll see this spelled as R-A-M, but that's not what it is. So Rang, the seed sound for Kundalini fire, Rang. For Rang, we can take that Raito, the ritual, the power of ritual, which fire is the first and most important element of ritual, is the ritual fire. Ram is fire, Raito. Ansus, which is communication with the divine, divine communication. And then Ingvaj, the power of energy, Kundalini energy, as it's forming to create. So the two things that are significant is the Raido and the Ansus, and ritual fire is about communicating with the fire to the gods. See? This is a science. So I don't know if I answered your question or not. You can do that with all kinds of things. If you really want to find out the essence of a name, the essence of a word, you can look at the runes to see what the syllables are combining to create. By the way, names, we have a lot of names in modern Western society that sound like gibberish. Roger, Roderick, Osborne, right? That's a good one. But, and we idealize like Native American names, Running Bear, that kind of thing. And we think, oh, that's so primitive, that name is Running Bear. Well, all of our names used to have meanings too, which is why, when people do silly things like just create nonsense names like Deshaun or Dawana, or, they just mash some sounds together and then name their children some weird sound. You're not doing your kid any benefit because there's nothing attached to that, let's see. Roger, for instance, is Hrothgar, which is something spear. Anyway, I forget exactly what it is. Osborne is my favorite. Ozzy Osbourne. Osbjorn, the divine bear. So we would idealize some Native American whose name was Spirit Bear. Oh, what a cool spiritual name. Well, Ozzy Osbourne, one of his ancestors must have been a berserker who took on the mantle of the bear, and so he was called Osbjorn, divine bear. Names have this power to them. So you can take anybody's name and you can put it into runes and you can find out what the name, the power that it has. Okay. Dr. Omni question, what is your opinion on shapeshifters, werewolf magic? I don't teach werewolf magic. Werewolf comes from two words. It means man-wolf. Wer means male, wolf, werewolf, man-wolf. Shapeshifters, again, I need to know again, it's best to ask me about stuff that I teach, because then I start to do what I'm about to do now. I don't know what you mean by shapeshifters, because a lot of people have different understandings of that. There are people who go into dream states and they dream that they're a beaver or something, and so they'll say, I've shapeshifted last night. And then you have people like the berserkers, who berserker means bear shirt, bear shirt. And these were warriors who took on the power of the bear, and they would put themselves into shamanic trance, and they wore bear pelts. That's why they were called berserkers. They wore bear pelts. And you knew the berserkers because the guys on the battlefield wearing the bear pelts were the guys you wanted to stay away from, because it wasn't just a human being coming at you, it was a human being possessed by the spirit of the bear. So what do I think of it? I think it's real. I don't know what, that's a huge question. What is my opinion? Give me a specific question, and you'll know what a specific question is if you go into my material, and you'll know what I'm asking. So I don't know if I answered your question or not, but it's the best I can do based on that question right now. John Burnham question. Do you see any correlation between the seed sounds and how they apply to seed and galder? You mean you're talking about the Vedic seed sounds? Do I see a correlation? Well, you're throwing in seed and galder. Those are two completely different things. And Galder means wizardry, and seed means shamanism. Shamanism meaning being a conduit for the gods, the spirits to speak through you or to see a vision. That's seed. Galder is wizardry, which means creating ritual, chanting runes, chanting spells. They're two different things. So the seed sounds, you mean like the Vedic seed sounds? I mean, when you chant mantra, you are using Galder. You're using a form of Galder. That's what mantra is. It's a form of Galder. It's just the Vedic form as opposed to, a Germanic form, which would be to use the runes or to use, poetry and a spell and that sort of thing. So that's the best answer I can give you based on that question. Okay, I don't see any more questions here. I will take another break here, and maybe this will be the end of it for today. If I have anything else I want, let me take a look at my notes and see if there's anything that I missed here. So I could do this. If you want to learn about what I teach in the runes, of course, you can go onto my channel. And I recommend everybody use a desktop when you want to get the most out of my channel. I know people want to use their phones and their iPads, and I'm sorry, it annoys me that people do that because it's kind of lazy, and YouTube doesn't give you a lot of options when you do that. So I have had people who will actually email me and ask me, do you have a video on meditation? And I'll say yes. All you have to do is go into my channel and search in my channel for meditation and all my meditation videos. And I asked one woman, do you know how to do that? And she got all bent out of shape. But I'm willing to bet that she was either using a phone or an iPad, because you can't just go onto somebody's YouTube channel and search within their channel. It won't let you do it. But if you go and use a desktop, you can go onto somebody's YouTube channel page, and on the top is the YouTube search bar. If you type in there, you'll get everything on YouTube. But if you go down where the person's name is and there's a little magnifying glass and you click on the magnifying glass, another search bar will come up. That will be to search inside somebody's channel. And so if you have any question about anything, you can type in any word you want and my videos will come up that pertain to that. And then you can look, and you can also go and look for the playlists, and you'll find whole playlists on certain subjects. So put the time and effort to see what I teach. It's in your best interest, and then, of course, I'll be able to answer your questions better. Anyway, let's see. What else did I want to say here? I think I talked about everything. The last thing I'm going to talk about, I'm going to give you a secret. I'm going to give you a secret about chanting runes, which if you followed my practices, you probably know what I'm going to say here. So, and I'll tell you how I found this out. In Taoist energy work, there's a thing, if you look for it, you'll find it, the 5 element sounds. And there are teachers in China and outside of China that teach these 5 element sounds. For instance, the sound of the earth is hu, which is obviously the hul breath is an earth sound, earth and water specifically. But they teach this thing called the 5 element sounds. Now, what's interesting is that the 5 element sounds, as people refer to it, was taught by a sage whose name was Tao Hong Jing. He was among the first Taoist mystics of the Shangqing, the Maoshan tradition, which was the first tradition. And all the other Taoist traditions came from that. And if you read what he says, he doesn't call them the 5 element sounds, he calls them the 5 element breaths. And the way he teaches it is that instead of saying whoo like that, you chant it silently, so silently that no sound comes out, and that the breath comes out of the mouth and the nose at the same time. And if you get this right, then what happens is you connect directly to the earth element. So I'll do that for you here in a second. Again, I'm trying to breathe out my nose and the mouth at the same time. It's not the easiest thing to do. See, when you do it out of the nose and the mouth at the same time, your breath slows down. And when that happens, you immediately go into trance. I mean, I started immediately just going into another, and I feel my third eye starting to pulsate. And so you've got a lot of Taoist masters out there, even in China, teaching these 5-element sounds who don't know how to do them. They're not sounds, they're breaths. Another way is to call them whispers. So one of the translation for the word rune is whisper, which means this is telling you how to chant them. So if you want to chant Fehu, the way to chant Fehu is not to chant it out loud. Fehu. You can do that. It's not that that won't work. But somebody, like people ask about the most powerful. This is the most powerful way to chant anything. Mantras, seed sounds, runes. So if I were to chant Fehu, I would. That's how I would chant it. And that's, if you really want to connect, now I can feel it all throughout my body here. If you want to chant the runes, that's how to do it. That's a secret that not a lot of people know. And the reason why I know that that's how they were originally intended is because it's right there in the name. Whispers. The whispers. Runes means whispers. Okay? All right, let's see here if we have any last minute questions before I say goodnight. Hi, Andre. Please, if you have a question, ask question so that I know you're asking a question. Veg Visir. So anyway, I'd have to look into that to be able to answer that for you. Okay, Skyclad Faye is giving me some information. She says, you can still search if you put Thunder Wizard first. Okay, I haven't tried that out. All I know is what I've experienced and what people have told me. I don't know if that's actually the best way to do it or not. Maybe you're right. I don't know. Grebnor Thomas, he's trying to ask a question. He says, can a person cast out spirits of people? Yes, I used to do it. If so, what do you know about that subject? Grebnor Thomas, I see you on here numerous times. I already know you haven't watched a lot of my videos because I have whole videos on exorcism. Go watch those videos. Follow what I just said. Learn how to search within my channel. Type in demon possession, exorcism, and it'll come up. All right, there you go. That's it. No more questions. So I will let you go. If you're really, truly interested in knowing everything that I teach, you can go to runecertification.thunderwizard.com. That has all of my videos, both private and public, and even some videos that I haven't done. You can get certified as a rune, 9-world rune reader from me through there, and you can just study. I don't even know how many hours of video there are on there. Tons and tons of video. And if you want my books, go to michaelwilliamdenny.com and you'll see all 3 of my books: Rune Shamanism, Rune Divination, and Advanced Rune Shamanism. And you can learn everything there is to know that I have about runes. If you want a very powerful package, you can go to runereadings.thunderwizard.com, or you can go to transformation.thunderwizard.com. Okay, that's it. All right, guys. Thank you. I will see you next weekend as I obsess on where the hell I'm going to move to next and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, thanks, guys. I'll talk to you soon.